The commotion began with a thunderous splash, rousing my German shepherd from a sleep usually impervious to the likes of thunderstorms and fireworks. Initially I suspected a tree had fallen. But then came the yelling, not just any shouting, but the piercing shriek of a woman accustomed to getting her way. A glance out the window revealed Karen, epitomizing her name with a leopard print swimsuit to match. She brandished a clipboard like a weapon, commanding attention as though invoking the gods of the Homeowners Association. Her grown son had just flung himself into my private pool with the enthusiasm of a morning cannonball, and it was only 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I questioned my wakefulness until Karen declared, "This pool belongs to the community," and waded into the shallow end, beach ball in tow. I realized then I was not dreaming but stuck in a farcical reality where entitlement reigned supreme, with Karen as its unchallenged monarch. 3 months ago I had finally completed my backyard oasis, a customized tiled pool illuminated by color-changing LED lights, a controlled temperature system, a cascading waterfall, and a personal favorite, an underwater bench equipped with jets. It was serene, exclusive, and mine. I had saved diligently, taken on extra work shifts, and even navigated the chaos left by a wayward contractor who vanished mid-project along with a chunk of the budget. But I had persevered, and it was supposed to be unequivocally mine. Karen, living just 2 doors down, was the self-proclaimed leader of the local HOA. She roamed the neighborhood with all the authority of a Buckingham Palace guard, her clipboard ever present, head adorned with a Bluetooth headset ceaselessly announcing her arrival, always with an iced latte in hand, presumably reserved for critiquing the emotional tenor of one's garden. She had already fined me once for my backyard lights and unapproved wind chimes, so I tended to disregard her presence. However, ignoring Karen proved no more effective than ignoring an obstinate raccoon camping in your car. Somewhere along the line, Karen had discovered an antiquated HOA charter from the 1990s, citing provisions for shared recreational spaces and community access to undefined areas. With typical flair, she interpreted this to include my pool, arguing that its central position within the neighborhood and lack of hostile fencing signified communal entitlement. The logic defied reason, but she enlisted the HOA board in her cause, 3 retired neighbors who desired only tranquility. They neither affirmed nor denied her claims, opting instead to consider the matter, which translated from Karen speak meant tacit approval. By the time I stepped outside that morning, my garden was hosting 3 additional intruders. One with a yoga mat, another carrying a beach towel, and a third with a duck-shaped baby float. Karen, looking thoroughly pleased, announced, "We've taken it upon ourselves to reclaim this space for the community. It's a testament to your efforts, it's beautiful for all to enjoy." At first I laughed, suspecting a prank, an HOA-themed bonding activity, or perhaps even a clandestine camera show. But when Karen revealed a printed leaflet advertising community pool hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., complete with my address in bold, my humor evaporated. I demanded she vacate the premises. She claimed legal rights, brandishing that ancient charter as if it were legislative gospel. "We'll see about that," she sniffed before rejoining her son in the pool. It was absurd. Over the following days, my security footage revealed a procession of uninvited guests treating my backyard as a holiday resort, teenagers using it as a snack receptacle, a woman grooming her nails on my lounger, and a child using the pool as a lavatory while their father was engrossed in social media. Confronting Karen again, she patronizingly remarked, "You should appreciate this sense of community, it's a rarity." I was on the brink of demonstrating an alternative rarity, patience from a person who had already researched the mechanics of a catapult. I erected a private property, "Trespassers will be prosecuted" sign, which Karen promptly replaced overnight with "Public Pool Number 1, sponsored by the HOA. Each one I removed, she replenished thrice over, distributing them to neighboring allies. Thus, I conceded this was no misunderstanding, it was full-scale war. Attempts at dialogue with the board were futile. 2 members were Karen's favored bridge partners and the third, her cousin. Nods and placid smiles masked their reluctance to oppose her. Legally, according to my solicitor, the issue was nuanced. Although my property was indeed privately owned, any HOA documentation suggesting communal entitlement posed a potential complication. In terms of community rights, if the facility had been in use without any objections, it could potentially be classified as quasi-public. However, disputing this in court might take months if not years, and even if victorious, the legal costs could easily surpass the value of the pool itself. That evening, I found myself in my garage, sitting in the dark with my dog at my side, my laptop glowing and a caffeine-induced determination pulsing through my veins. I wasn't just aiming to win, I intended for Karen to rue every splash, every yoga pose, every duck float, and every community flyer she'd ever endeavored. The breakthrough came when I unearthed a line hidden in the city's ordinance regulations under zoning laws. If a recreational facility charges for entry, it ceases to be designated as community shared and is reclassified as private commercial property. Inspiration struck like lightning. They would need to pay to swim now, and it was well known that Karen was not fond of paying, even for her own coffee top-up. I smiled, not a friendly grin, but the kind reminiscent of a villain just before his theme tune begins. The following morning I was a man with a mission. Rather than building a fence, I was installing a coin slot. Armed with coffee in one hand and power tools in the other, I felt unstoppable. Karen might have declared the pool public, but I had devised a new strategy. It involved metal, some wiring, and a contractor who had previously let me down mid-project but now owed me a favor. When he arrived, his expression was sheepish, guilt still written on his face. Explaining my plan set his face aglow with the enthusiasm of a child constructing a treehouse equipped with a trapdoor. I asked him to help me install a turnstile complete with a working coin slot, the kind you might have seen at amusement parks or public toilets in the 80s. He questioned my seriousness, to which I replied soberly, "Absolutely." As he busied himself welding the frame and setting up the mechanism, I focused on creating signs. These were not petty or sarcastic. They exuded formality, laminated to look official, complete with a legal-style font. Entrance fee, 25 pence per person. Cash only, no change, no exceptions. Beneath it, I added a pivotal clause. By paying, you confirm this is a private recreational facility and waive all HOA rights to access. I wasn't just making a point, I was dismantling the illusion of entitlement Karen had constructed as synonymous with ownership. By midday, the turnstile stood by the side gate, connected to a robust steel frame anchored into concrete. It was an eyesore, admittedly, but temporary enough to serve its purpose. The contractor even rigged it with a motion sensor alarm to deter any overeager attempts at hopping over. "You realize you're coming across like a cartoon villain now?" he jibed. I retorted, "Good. Karen's been the antagonist long enough. It's time to shift the narrative." That afternoon, Karen strutted down the pavement, iced matcha in one hand and Bluetooth earpiece in the other. She came to an abrupt halt at the gate, eyes widening as she took in the turnstile, its coin slot glowing ominously red. She tried the gate handle, locked. Waving to catch my attention, I simply smiled and waved back from my deck, coolly sipping a soda as if preparing for a showdown. Her frustration was palpable as she called out, "What is this nonsense?" I casually shrugged. "Private business operation, just as you suggested. Community pool? No longer. Welcome to Q-Splash Enterprises, 25 pence per guest. We're keeping things lean this year." Her glare was as if I had set fire to her treasured HOA binder. "This is illegal," she barked. "Unapproved structural modifications violate HOA Code Section 4B. I pointed to the newly mounted sign above her head, which declared, "Per City Ordinance 12.4.8, this recreational area now operates under commercial access guidelines. Direct disputes to small business licensing." Filing the paperwork earlier that morning had been remarkably straightforward, requiring just £40 and an online license printout. Karen was speechless, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly, akin to a hen that had just laid a cube-shaped egg. Moments later, she whipped out her phone, intent on rallying every member of the board, punctuating her calls with priceless phrases like, "This is a catastrophe, he's mocking us," and my favorite, "Does anyone have bolt cutters?" Before finally storming off, she directed her ire at a passing teenager on a bicycle, barking, "Don't make sure to drop in a coin for the pool," they said. By 5 p.m. the scene truly came alive. One by one, the familiar faces began to appear, treating my pool as if it were the community park. The yoga enthusiast was the first to arrive, with her mat in tow and earbuds securely in place. She hesitated at the gate, glanced at the sign, and fished a quarter out of her fanny pack. With a click of the turnstile, she was through, giving me a nonchalant shrug before heading to the shallow end. Shortly after, 2 neighborhood children gleefully tossed in their quarters, bolting for the water with cries of, "This is way cooler than the community center." By sunset, my collection stood at $3.25 in quarters. For the first time in 2 weeks, my grill was untouched, my deck furniture undisturbed, and no mud had been tracked through my garden. It was the most tranquil day since Karen's chaos took hold. Naturally, the peace was short-lived. The next morning, I was jolted awake by what could only be described as a cacophony akin to an irate duck meeting a lawnmower. Karen was in full fervor, her voice amplified by a megaphone at the edge of my drive. "This is a breach of community trust," she bellowed, accusing me of exploiting our neighbors. Accompanying her were a handful of her bridge club comrades, one wielding a sign declaring HOA greed, another with a boombox softly playing Enya, presumably to cast a peaceful protest aura. As they yelled and chanted, I let them be, but when one attempted to scale my fence, the motion sensor screamed like a siren from an apocalyptic film. Frightened, she tumbled backwards, finding an unplanned seat in a bush. Karen, meanwhile, looked ready to burst with frustration. Later that day, I found a formal HOA warning letter on my doorstep, citing me for unauthorized structural modifications, improper business operations, and promoting a hostile community environment. Despite the sternness of the warning, I couldn't help but chuckle, for the city inspector had already assured me that everything I had done was fully compliant for a temporary business venture. In fact, he expressed a desire to try the pool himself. Karen's grip on our community was slipping, unraveling her long-standing control tactics that had gone unchallenged for years. This battle had moved beyond splashing water. It was about standing one's ground. When someone takes a mile after you've given them an inch, sometimes you need to install a toll booth and charge them 25 cents for the privilege. By week's end, Karen's demonstrations had petered out. Most of the neighbors were disinterested in the drama. They simply wanted a swim, and a quarter seemed a small price to pay. A few even expressed their gratitude for the new turnstile, saying it brought a sense of order to the area. One man even suggested painting it with a neighborhood emblem to spruce things up. I told him, perhaps later. Karen, however, remained undeterred. I could sense it in her eyes whenever she strolled past my house, staring daggers at the coin as though it had wronged her personally. Instinctively, I knew her campaign wasn't over. She was plotting something shrewd and untidy, but whatever it was, I'd be prepared. This was a feud, and I was merely warming up to the challenge. By the third day of the coin operation, most residents had either adapted or kept their distance. Karen's fury, though, was evolving, evidenced by her lingering gazes and tightened grip on her reusable coffee cup as if its sole purpose was to provoke her. I knew a storm was brewing, but I hadn't anticipated how peculiar it would become until I noticed a new flyer on the community board. In bold print, it announced an emergency HOA meeting, topic Poolgate crisis, with the agenda claiming the unlawful coin-based access system threatens community unity. It was absurd yet precisely what one would expect from Karen. The meeting was scheduled at the community clubhouse for Thursday evening. Initially disinterested in attending, a text from my neighbor Greg urging, "Mate, you've got to see this circus in action," changed my mind. Walking in 5 minutes late, sporting flip-flops and a t-shirt proclaiming private property enthusiast, I found Karen already in full swing, pacing and presenting with the fervor of a courtroom drama's lead attorney, slideshow in hand, not electronic but printed, of course. Mounted boards with laminated photographs highlighted my newly installed turnstile, zoomed in on the coin slot, alongside a candid shot of an unfortunate neighbor bending to retrieve a dropped coin, which she labeled undignified access. The image nearly caused me to burst with laughter. Karen, with her customary flair, cleared her throat before launching into an impassioned speech regarding community rights, shared ownership, and what she dramatically termed moral vandalism. She accused me of transforming a joyful communal space into a commercial fortress, exploiting neighbors, undermining neighborhood unity, and wielding pool access as a tool of personal vendetta. "He's installed a coin slot," she proclaimed, but in reality he's installing division. A few older residents nodded sympathetically. However, most appeared as if they were watching a perplexing infomercial with no remote to change the channel. The highlight of the meeting unfurled when Karen dramatically produced what she claimed was the original HOA community charter. The same outdated document she had used before, now vibrantly marked with pink tabs and handwritten notes. She waved it theatrically before letting it drop onto the table with the dramatic flair of a mic drop. "Right here," she stated, stabbing a paragraph, "shared recreational space access shall not be denied due to technical barriers or mechanical contraptions." When someone queried the document's date, she answered, 1991, prompting Greg to loudly muse, "Wasn't that when Blockbuster was still charging rewind fees?" Called upon unexpectedly, I stood up and displayed my laminated temporary business license from the city, explaining calmly, "This isn't an amusement park. It's a private recreational business under Ordinance 12.4.8. I have all the necessary paperwork and the tax ID." The attendees murmured, while Karen appeared bewildered as if encountering paperwork not printed in Comic Sans for the first time. "You're exploiting neighbors," she accused. I nodded. "At 25 pence a swim, I'm barely covering chlorine costs," which prompted a few laughs and even Greg clapped. Karen's face reddened unpleasantly. As she tried to steer the meeting toward a vote, the board president, a quiet man named Roy, intervened with his typical succinctness. "No vote. Not illegal," Karen retorted, but Roy simply shrugged. "Don't like it, pay the quarter." Karen exited before the meeting ended, discarding her flyers but with a determined gait indicating she wasn't done yet. 2 days later, evidence of her resolve emerged. Early morning, while watering the lawn, I noticed the coin display behaving oddly. Approaching, I discovered gum and a penny jammed into the slot, short-circuiting the system and freezing the turnstile in a locked position. Security footage revealed Karen, clad in black, attempting to sabotage it under cover of night, resembling a raccoon trying to access a vending machine. Her clandestine activities, though comical, constituted sabotage. I reported the incident at the local police station, where the officer, upon viewing the footage, sighed, "Is she really wearing a neighborhood watch hoodie while trespassing?" I nodded. "She'll likely play the victim," he cautioned. I shrugged. "I just want it documented and maybe a warning before she escalates." Undeterred, that night, Karen staged a chaotic counterattack. She organized a free swim for freedom, gathering on the pavement outside my house. With her niece's Bluetooth speaker, a cooler of lemonade, and a dozen folding chairs, about 6 people attended. None swam. They simply waved signs with slogans like, "Stop the Toll Troll," and "No Coins for Community." One child held a balloon reading, "Down with the Slot." I watched from my window upstairs, bemused, munching crisps. The smell of popcorn lingered as the group contemplated the time before someone inevitably had to excuse themselves for a bathroom break. They remained for 4 hours until slowly dispersing, leaving their protest signs abandoned by the roadside. Karen persisted until the sun dipped below the horizon, fixated on the gate as though her glare might cause it to vanish. I held my tongue because I needn't say anything. I had clinched the first round of our standoff. Yet, I knew this was merely the beginning. Karen was relentless, having tried flyers, sabotage, and protests, none of which succeeded. I anticipated her next move, something more audacious, surely involving a loud spectacle, perhaps accompanied by water and undoubtedly public. When the heat wave arrived on a Thursday, the neighborhood started to melt by Friday afternoon. Pavements shimmered in the oppressive heat, children were too sticky and tired to argue over their turn with the basketball, and even my German Shepherd had retreated under the deck with a bowl of ice cubes. I knew Karen wouldn't simply simmer in her house, she would erupt. And she did, right on cue. Thus began what I dubbed the Great Leak. As I sipped a cold drink on my patio, I noticed my pool's water level decreasing alarmingly fast. The noise of water trickling caught my attention. I dashed to the pump station to find the main drainage valve suspiciously open. Someone had interfered with it, resulting in over 1,000 gallons cascading into my garden, soaking the fence and submerging Karen's boundary line in poetic justice. Reviewing the security footage, there she was, dressed like a comic strip villain, crouching under the deck with a wrench in hand. She struggled with the pipes, inadvertently doused herself, muttering about community service, yet managing to open the valve before scampering away. Her incompetence was striking. I was more impressed than angry. I contacted the authorities, filed another report, and shared the footage with the Homeowners Association, captioning it simply, "This is your leader." That evening did not bring an end to the saga, for Karen sent out a fresh batch of flyers, this time touting them as party invitations, glossy, like they were pitched by a wedding planner or for a baby shower, inviting neighbors to a delightful evening poolside for a bachelorette bash, with my address as the venue. I stared at the flyer, pondering whether she had lost her sanity or was probing my limits. Astonishingly, guests arrived in formal wear, some bearing gifts. She had set up a makeshift bar outside the fence, blaring music from a speaker strapped to a lawn chair. One guest even assumed the payment turnstile was part of the party gimmick. I refrained from calling the police, not yet. I had something better in mind. At precisely 8 p.m., with over a dozen guests having slipped in through the paid gate, I activated my motion sensor system, installed weeks earlier but unused until now. The pool lights dimmed. The speakers thundered to life with a cacophony of barking dogs, police sirens and foghorns. Chaos ensued. Karen's scream pierced the air, a guest dropped a drink in the pool, a man tumbled into a flamingo float. Simultaneously, the sprinklers erupted, not the garden variety, but the high-pressure ones designed for emergencies, showering everyone on the patio with icy water akin to riot control at a concert. Pandemonium erupted. Guests slipped, shouted, and desperately attempted to escape through the single-entry turnstile, creating a soaked, irate bottleneck. Someone dialed emergency services, likely perceiving madness, yet trying to explain, "We're trespassing and it's raining horizontally." As they waited, confusion reigned and soon the fire brigade arrived to untangle the absurdity. The fire department arrived, lights flashing, to a scene that must have appeared absurd from outside, adults drenched, screaming amidst the racket of loud barking from hidden speakers, with Karen at the center, insisting to the fire captain she had every right to be there. The captain was unfazed. He glanced at my documentation, noted the coin-operated system and motion sensors and stated, "This is private property. About 10 witnesses confirm you organized this without the owner's consent." Karen attempted to play the victim, claiming I had extended the invitation and it was merely a mistake, arguing that the flyers were intended for her niece's backyard but had been misprinted with the wrong address. The captain then questioned the presence of the coin gate, and Karen seemed ready to explode in frustration. At that critical moment, one of her own guests, drenched and with mascara running, turned to her and exclaimed, "You said this was your pool." Karen's confidence visibly crumbled. The fire department didn't arrest her but issued an incident report, handed her a warning, and advised her to keep off my property under threat of criminal trespassing charges. As the crowd thinned out and my garden reclaimed its tranquil state, I relaxed with a beer and watched the sunset. The sprinklers and motion sensors had served their purpose, and once more Karen had underestimated my resolve in defending what was mine. Later that evening, Greg stopped by, handing me a neatly rolled bag of quarters. "The pool's never been more entertaining," he chuckled. "I'm buying next week's pass in advance." We both laughed, and for the first time in weeks I felt the tide had truly turned. Yet, I remained vigilant. Karen was not just an annoyance but a relentless force. For 3 days, there was an unnerving silence from Karen, a stillness that was more unsettling than any of her previous acts of protest, sabotaging flyers, or bogus pool gatherings. It was the kind of quiet before a thunderstorm. I kept watch over the cameras, the gate, and the coin slot that was now generating enough quarters for a weekly pizza and half a refill of chlorine. It seemed unlikely Karen would simply accept defeat, especially after her public embarrassment. Karen only knew how to go down fighting. And so, when there was a knock at my door at 8 a.m. on Monday, I was unsurprised to find a county sheriff standing there, sunglasses perched and clipboard in hand. He was responding to a complaint alleging unauthorized business activities, misuse of residential zoning, and potential code violations related to public access barriers. Suppressing a laugh, I offered him a cold drink and invited him to inspect the property. We walked through the side gate, which clicked shut with its typical mechanical satisfaction. Noticing the coin slot, the sheriff raised an eyebrow, tapped the gate, and nodded. I provided him with the printed license, zoning ordinance, email confirmations, and security footage showing Karen organizing events without permission. He reviewed everything meticulously without haste or humor. Eventually he nodded and remarked, "Everything looks in order. She's just wasting time." At that moment, as if summoned by the mere mention of her name, Karen appeared. She turned the corner purposefully, clutching a fresh clipboard and wearing a large sun hat as if leading an expedition. She locked eyes with the sheriff and launched into what she presumably thought was an impassioned speech. She accused me of defiling the sanctity of the neighborhood, demonizing nature, and corrupting local youth with vending machine-style greed. She even asserted that my pool was psychologically harmful to children unable to afford the 25-cent fee. The sheriff stayed silent, instead pointing to a sign clearly stating, "Private property," alongside the laminated city approval. Karen's expression remained steadfast as she continued her tirade, trampling over logic like a stray weed in her meticulously maintained lawn. Then she crossed a line claiming, "This man deceived us into believing this was a public pool and then charged us. It's fraud, entrapment, and against federal law." The sheriff's gaze held a blend of mild amusement and pity as he produced a notepad. "Did you say you entered this property thinking it was public?" he asked. After a pause she nodded. He made a quick note. "And did you organize events here under that belief?" Another pause, then a sharp, "Yes, according to the HOA charter." He flipped the page. "Actually, that would make you accountable for trespassing and possible damage to private property." For the first time, Karen faltered. The possibility of her being in the wrong hadn't occurred to her. Her mouth opened and shut as she attempted to produce her copy of the charter, but the sheriff stopped her. "We've already reviewed it. That clause was removed in 2003, long before your involvement. The online records confirm this. Your claim has no legal merit. He affixed his pen, handed her a written warning, and instructed her to leave. Any further harassment might lead to criminal charges, he added as he departed. Karen stood immobilized, clutching the paper like it was a dire pronouncement. Her departure was subdued, devoid of her usual vigor. It dawned on me then, Karen was not merely defeated, she was deflated. Her bubble of authority had finally burst. A week passed and a letter from the HOA arrived. Brief and signed by Roy, renowned for his brevity, it declared Karen's removal from the board due to ongoing misconduct, community disturbances and legal issues. An interim board would be appointed, and the HOA would cease its involvement with any matters concerning my property. It was over. To celebrate, I hosted an exclusive pool party for genuine guests, friends who respected the boundary between personal and communal space. Greg brought a sound system, others grilled burgers, and someone set up a karaoke machine. As we belted out 90s tunes, the sheriff off-duty joined in, dropping some coins before performing a cannonball. As the colorful pool lights danced at dusk, I noticed something on the fence. Someone had hung Karen's old peacock swimsuit above a sign reading Retired Villains Club. No one admitted to it and I decided to let it be, it felt like the right keepsake. The next day, walking past Karen's house, it was silent. Her clipboard had vanished from the porch. No flyers, no megaphone, only drawn curtains and an unkempt lawn. Rumors suggest she might be moving or simply taking a hiatus from HOA activities. Either way, her absence was a relief, and the neighborhood seemed to breathe easier. Amusing how a simple pool could cause such a stir. Perhaps it wasn't about the water but rather the boundaries it represented. Some things, regardless of their allure, aren't yours. To guard that principle, one might resort to coins, signs, sprinklers, alarms, and occasionally a viral video. I still get occasional visitors drawn to the notorious pool. They drop a coin, snap a picture, and depart. The HOA sends fewer letters now, and Greg jokes about franchising the idea. Sometimes I reflect on the saga. One woman's entitlement led to an extraordinary conflict. Yet I'd repeat it all for peace, privacy, and the enjoyment of my little chlorinated haven. Every coin was worth it,